Hello and welcome to this webcast. I'm Tory Hornsby with EV Bids. With me, I have Rod Stucky. Welcome, Rod.
Good to be here, Tory.
Today is January 16th, 2024, and we are going to be discussing the hot news that's happening right now with Hertz selling roughly 20,000 of their electric vehicles. We'll take a look at the effect that it's already having on the marketplace and do a little research on what the impact might be moving into 2024. Also talk a little bit about the history of why this is happening and why it's not time to panic as an EV owner at all. But we do want to share what this does mean for the values of EVs. So Rod, I'm going to show my screen here, and why don't you give us a little bit of the background, the backstory on, what has caused this with Hertz?
Well, yeah, of course, Hertz went into bankruptcy back during the pandemic, and when they came out of bankruptcy, they brought in a banker named Stephen Scher from Goldman Sachs to be the interim CEO, and he made a real commitment to EVs, thinking that like everybody in the industry, or well, not everybody, at least from the OEM perspective down, a lot of folks betting on EVs, and he made a major investment in right when they came out of bankruptcy, cut a deal with Tesla in the billions, and General Motors, Kia, and Hyundai, as well as Polestar, the Volvo electric vehicle brand, and he was fully committed to this model. And fast forward, when he did that, in his defense, back during, if you think back, the values were holding steady. And one of the important things for Hertz, if you think about their business model from an asset value, is the value on their balance sheet for their fleet. And so depreciation and values are something important. I think he was betting on EVs continuing to hold their value as they were during the pandemic. And fast forward, as we talked about in our last episode, the market has changed drastically. It started when Elon lowered his prices, then the influx of legacy manufacturers getting in the game, Tesla upping their production, and then interest rates go up, the economy slows down, and here we are in January of 2024, and it's a perfect storm where the supply and demand have gotten misaligned, and he's ready to offload a whole lot of these EVs because the demand isn't there. That's kind of a high level overview.
And this article in Bloomberg shows, I've highlighted this top bullet point where it essentially restates what you said of lower EV resale values combined with higher repair costs, which we're going to delve into here in a moment, have just weighed on the results of having such a large percentage of their inventory and vehicles to rent out being EVs. This not only is impacting the EV market today with these 20,000 units being unloaded over the course of 2024, it also is going to slow the pace of the EVs that they're buying from GM and Tesla and Polestar as we move into 2024 and to 2025 as well. Here's another Bloomberg article that we've highlighted a few things. Really, the crux of the issue for current Tesla owners and other brand EVs is that we are seeing the value of their cars decline. And I think that we'll continue to see that a bit as we move into 2024. And it's, again, not just Tesla, it's all EVs, because they're not going to be buying up the inventory that they once had expected. As you just discussed, in October, this all kind of started in October, right? Whenever Scher signaled that he was going to cut back on EVs. What was the impact here, Rod?
Well, let's see. Scheer signaled in October he would cut back on EVs when the company's earnings missed expectations due to higher depreciation and repair costs from its electric vehicle fleet. He said Hertz would have beaten analysts' earnings estimates if not for the damage that Tesla price cuts and repair costs did to the bottom line. For the fourth quarter, Hertz will take a $245 million related depreciation in expense. So, if you think about their business model, they have a budget for depreciation every single month because cars depreciate, right? Well, from reading this, it sounds to me like in addition to their projected depreciation expense, they've had to fast forward and accelerate an additional $245 million due to the fact that the demand has not met the supply, and due to the fact that the repair costs have exceeded what they would have projected. And so, diving off into that repair cost, just real quick, something Tory and we kind of discovered preparing for this call as we were going through and looking through a lot of the Hertz fleet. We were surprised at how many of the fleet vehicles that they have for sale have been in accidents, some minor damage, some major damage. And so it is known that you can't get body work and collision damage done on a Tesla at just any body shop. You have to go to select body shops, and it is known to be very expensive and very time consuming. That's been one of the gripes of Tesla owners. And so to see how many of these in this Tesla fleet have had accidents, I would assume that's what he's referring to primarily in the repair costs exceeding projections in addition to the depreciation cost.
Yep. And this, those challenges combined with, as you mentioned, a challenge with the supply versus the demand of these vehicles, man, that $245 million additional cost of depreciation, that's a hard hit. So it makes sense that they're wanting to right the supply and demand equation that they have. But in doing so, the next thing here I have highlighted shows that over the course of 2023, the value of one-year-old EVs fell 35% in the US compared to where we are today. That's double the appreciation of an ICE vehicle, an internal combustion engine vehicle, according to Cox Automotive. And this sharp decline in value is not necessarily as much a supply issue, although that the supply and demand issue is there, but it really is sharply due to Elon Musk lowering the value of the new vehicles in a huge way. 35% on some of them, isn't that correct? They lowered I know the Plaid models went from well over $100,000 down to $89,000. It was maybe 37%. Do you remember those percentages?
Yeah, there were a couple of them over 35%, I believe. So, and again, it was a combo platter. It was Elon lowering the prices, and then it was all of these other legacy manufacturers getting in the EV game. They've all jumped in. If you look at Audi, if you look at Mercedes, BMW, Ford, of course, with the Mach-E and the Lightning truck, Chevrolet, everybody's getting in the EV game, and that came, a flood of supply, and then Elon lowers the prices on the Teslas, and all of this has just created this perfect storm. And again, if you go back to the macro economy, interest rates going up, economy slowing, and all of this has contributed.
Yep. Another point here too is that we're seeing a lot of negative equity for electric vehicles compared to, or for loans that originated in the first quarter of 2022. After 18 months, the average EV had $9,400 in negative equity, compared to ICE vehicles at $3,700. So again, just continuing to this waterfall effect of the additional supply over demand and Elon Musk lowering the values in such a big manner. It's really hurting valuations and causing negative equity. We already mentioned this, but I've got it highlighted. Hertz is also lowering their grand ambitions for EVs when they committed in 22 to order as many as 175,000 EVs from General Motors over 5 years. It's not even Polestar or any of the Hyundai or Tesla. This is just GM, 175,000 vehicles. Do you think a sharp cut in 175,000 vehicle sales is going to matter to the valuation of General Motors over 5 years? I think it will.
You better believe it. And that was something interesting. This is bigger than just the market situation today. When you look at this, and I don't really think I had not realized how significant of an impact that the rental companies made on the overall market outlook. But when you consider all of the vehicles, the electric vehicles that Hertz has on order that they've not yet taken delivery of, that they're now he's claiming he's not canceling the order. Scheer says that there wasn't a time frame, so he's not saying that he won't still fulfill all that he's ordered, but he's definitely saying he's going to have to obviously push them way out. And so, but I mean, if you picture you're a manufacturer and you're gearing up for the production and you're budgeting for the production, and now that's not going to happen, there's a major correction in your forecasting as well. So this has impacts, in front of us, not just in the rearview mirror.
Absolutely. And, all of this at face value, and you see this a lot in the news, and we're seeing it in social media posts of that, even the title of this article on Bloomberg is fire sale. It's not a fire sale. They're selling 20,000 of their vehicles over a year, and that is more than what they had planned to do, but it's not a fire sale. And this last note here, it says, this doesn't mean EVs are a flash in the pan. We don't need to panic. U.S. sales of EVs rose 40% in the fourth quarter. So we're not even talking about all of 2023, which was an excellent year for the electric vehicle industry. We're talking about just the fourth quarter. So if you're looking at the whole year for 2023, you could say, well, earlier in the year, there was more demand. No, in the fourth quarter, U.S. sales rose 40% from a year earlier, from 2022. This is awesome. And a survey by S&P Global Mobility found that 67% of the people that they surveyed will consider an EV in the future. So batteries are getting better. Heck, the new standard range Model 3 for 2023, 2024 is supposed to be charged to 100%. At least once a week and ongoing. So keep it charge it to 100%. That's a big difference from the batteries where we've had this. They have degradation if you charge them more to 80, 85, 90% on a regular basis. And we're seeing a lot of jump in progress being made with the solid state batteries that are going to have better longevity, better power, less degradation, and you can charge them to 100% as well. So we are seeing improvements all around. The EV market has a very bright future. It's not time to panic, but we are seeing a hit in the value of used EVs right now because of all that's going on. You'd be burying your head in the ground not to recognize it. And I think to kind of sum it all up, what Stephen Scheer, the Hertz CEO, said, and I'm going to put the link to these articles in this video in the description or as a comment, depending upon the website that you're on, YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. I'll put the links as a comment or in the description. But in this video, Rod, do you have the quote that Stephen Scheer said pulled up on your side?
Yeah, he opened up the interview on CNBC and he said, the reality is we're trying to bring supply in line with demand and address a cost-related issue with regards to damage and damage costs. That's what it is. And I think that's very succinct. And to tie this back to your point, Tory, with EV sales being up, some 40%, and the numbers looking as promising as they are, yet we have this major excess in supply. It just goes to show you how bad the OEMs, and in this case Hertz, you could lump them in, but the just how much they've overshot. The industry has overshot the demand on EVs. I mean, they obviously were projecting growth in the 150, 200% growth if the market was going to absorb all of the product being pushed out into it, with the fact it can grow 40% and still have a major excess supply. So this kind of goes back to just this same thing that we keep talking about, Tory, is there's an excess in supply, yet, year over year, we just talked about it on our last call, Tesla sold 1.8 million units in 2023, up from what they do in 22, Tory, 1.3 or something, up 500,000 units, give or take.
And that was amazingly, everybody is just skipping over this. That was their largest year of growth in terms of units produced, not percentage because their numbers are getting bigger, but in terms of units produced, right at or just over or just under, I can't remember, but right at that 500,000 vehicle mark growth in 2023. Biggest year of growth ever for Tesla. And I think something that we always say too is, man, if we can get the government and some of these bigger companies out of pushing the EV market so heavily, I've always noticed that, America doesn't respond well to people pushing things and shoving it down their throat and saying, hey, you got to do this. America doesn't respond well to that. The market has never responded well to that from what I can see. If we'll just let the EV industry grow, there's plenty of supply, of demand out there, and we'll have very, very healthy, great growth. We just got to stop these assumptions of these huge gaps of, hey, we're going to go all electric by 2032, or as we always talk about, and as most people will tell you, our power grid, we can't go all electric by 2032. We don't have enough time to get the power grid ready for that. And we need to let this market grow. We need to see the technology continue to improve. It's amazing. This is an amazing vehicle that Tesla and all these others are offering in many ways. If we'll just let the market grow naturally, it's going to be amazing. If the government gets involved and these bigger companies come and start trying to shove people towards it, it's going to continue to be catastrophic. Would you agree with that?
I would. And, to kind of circle back around to this situation with Hertz and to just kind of paint a picture, this is a little bit of the hypothesis that you and I have come up with. This is not something that I have heard Cher say himself, but Hertz policy is to charge the vehicle before you drop it off. And, you got to ask yourself, how practical is that? You're running late to catch your flight, and now you've got to go find a supercharger. And, I was telling a story about, Tory and I have traveled all over the country for business ventures, and we're always in rental cars. And it's like, do we have time to run into the gas station, or do we just pay the, $14 a gallon they're going to charge us and let them fill it up? And then, from another perspective, backing up in this rental process, the renting a Tesla sounds fun. I want to drive one. I've never driven one. I want to experience one. But then again, I picture myself, I've flown into, an unfamiliar city. I'm not exactly sure where I'm going or how to get there. And I've got, my Google Maps out, and I'm racing the clock. And then I get into a vehicle that I've never driven, that type of vehicle. I'm completely unfamiliar with it, and it's telling me to download apps, and it's just a completely new experience. So you kind of got to ask yourself, how well thought out and again, this is just our hypothesis, but from both of those perspectives of getting off the airplane and being in a hurry to get to a meeting and getting in a vehicle you're unfamiliar with, all the way to returning that, I can see where that may be something on the rental specific side. Tying this back to Hertz, that ICE vehicles just may be, for the foreseeable future, of course, battery technology is going to continue to improve. Charging infrastructure is going to continue to improve. But for now, I would say it's safe to say Hertz jumped the gun a little bit on this EV thing. Would you agree, Tory?
Totally, I would agree. Sorry about the phone ring there. Let me get this phone muted. I thought I had done that. That's a point that Stephen Scher makes in this video. Is at one point he talks about how there are people who are comfortable driving an EV and they know how to drive an EV, and then there are people who aren't and who don't know how to drive one, and they get in for the first time. And I think that this has played a pretty good role too of people wanting to experience a Tesla and to go and rent one. I think that has happened a good amount of the time. I think that's healthy, but for the average drive, I think that it's the wrong fit, is, to your point here, Rod. But you get in one of these, and if you don't know what you're doing and you're excited about it, you're playing on the screen and you're driving, an electric vehicle, and you're not paying attention as much as you do, and everything's kind of new. You really need to have a slow roll into driving and getting used to an electric vehicle, not leaving the airport. Right? Leaving the airport is about one of the most difficult things that you can do, in driving, because you're in the city. It's confusing. The directions are confusing. It's the first time you're driving an EV. And I think that's probably in large part why there's a lot of accidents on these Teslas that are happening, not just within the rental car, business model, but I'm reading stories of Teslas do have crashes at a little higher rate than some of the, ICE vehicles that are in the same category. And I attribute that to people playing with the screen and the electronics while they're driving, instead of doing that, pulling off the side of the road, doing that in a parking lot, doing that in their driveway around their neighborhood. They're doing it on the main roads and expressways, leaving these airports. So moving on here, it's funny to see a couple of the different reactions that people have. This is a post from Car Dealership Guy, somebody that we follow. And you can see here he's saying some of the Tesla Model 3s are cheap, as low as $14,000 with the used EV tax credit, which is $4,000. So that will be $18,000 here, $4,000 off what you see on the screen. But when we scroll down here and look at the comments, we've got everything from this top comment of, saying that the rental cars are literally the worst cars out there. These are driven by very low credit score people that do Uber and Lyft. They pay a weekly amount to drive the car. They don't respect the car. They take zero care for the vehicle. They supercharge them constantly by driving them for ride shares, which significantly deteriorates the battery condition. And he said, buyer beware. You just don't know what you're going to get with these. But then we come down here and we see, somebody else saying that, hey, this is normal and customary, right? Hertz does this all the time. Teslas aren't the only things that they're selling, right, Rod?
Oh, of course, it's part of their business model, right? I mean, you don't get a rental car, and I mean, rarely do you have a rental car with over 50,000 miles on it, because that is their business model, and they sell their vehicles once they get they wholesale them once they get a certain amount of mileage on it, and that's the game that they're playing, and they're selling all their vehicles. And I think that Scher's decision is based off of, with this Tesla situation, that it comes back to that depreciation and that supply and demand situation. One article I was reading, the author said that he had noticed a lot of the luxury fleet from Hertz. If you wanted the luxury vehicles, they would push you towards a Tesla. And he's like, hey, I wanted a luxury rental, and they didn't have anything but a Tesla, and I didn't want an EV, so I ended up moving over to Enterprise. And so you do have to wonder if that story is accurate, then that's a whole nother challenge with this thing. If they've replaced the luxury fleet with all EVs, and the luxury buyer doesn't want an electric vehicle for the reasons you and I just talked about. I mean, you were giving me a little bit of, I almost got anxiety when you were explaining leaving an airport in a major metro city that I'm not familiar with. You're right. I mean, that is intense, trying to get out of that damn airport that I've never been to in Baltimore, Maryland, to get where I'm going. And so if they did in fact replace that luxury fleet, and now people are going to the competitor to find a luxury vehicle, that's kind of a double whammy, hurting Hertz. But obviously, yeah, this thread, I read through this thread on Twitter, is pretty interesting. All these people are acting like, hey, there's no big deal. This comment, I love this one down here. And the Teslas they sell have relatively high mileage because, quote, no one has rented them. And they do. They have. You and I have been through them. They got high miles, and so somebody's renting them. So it's not like there's no demand at all. So it's so interesting. EVs are so polarizing. You can research this all day long, and you've got people extreme on both sides of the equation. So
we've seen that on our marketing. Just with people. There's a lot of ignorance out there with EVs on both sides. There's ignorance on. They're way more dangerous and catch fire. Well, that's not accurate at all. If you look at vehicle fires, you're more likely to have a fire on an ICE vehicle than you are an electric vehicle. Now, of course, there is an issue with the fires because they, batteries do certainly burn and are harder to put out. But I love this comment here of just kind of cutting through all of this in the news. Man, Hertz is only selling Teslas right now because they're expensive to repair and nobody wants them. No, it's 2% of their sales. They have 27,000 vehicles for sale. 5,400 are Chevys, 5,300 are Fords, 661 are Teslas. So again, this isn't. Don't get into the hype of we're in this panic. It's a fire sale. The world is ending for EVs. No, it's not at all. But again,
I would describe what we're in as a correction, and I think it's a significant correction. And I think that it's not a favorable position to be in if you're a seller right now, and if you're a buyer, you're in the driver's seat. And it is a correction, and it probably is going to be for the foreseeable future.
Definitely a correction, but I guess my point is that the EV market, electric vehicles in general, isn't crashing and no longer going to be there. It's a very healthy market. We're just going through a period of correction, and it's going to be painful for a minute, especially for people who have purchased, a Tesla over the last 2 years, a new one.
Not just Teslas. I mean,
oh yeah.
All the EVs. I mean,
yeah.
Even the luxury brands like Audis and Mercedes are just
Cadillac, all of them. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. I did say Tesla, but it's the EV market. If you've bought one over the last couple of years, it's going to be painful for a minute. It will be
for sure.
So moving over and looking at, you mentioned we've been through these and nobody wants them, no one's rented them, but yet they all have an incredible amount of mileage or miles on them. So go into hertzcarsales.com. This is the vehicles that are for sale, specifically looking at the Teslas, 64,000 miles. These are 2022 models, 59,000. Here's one with 81,000 miles on it. And we did a little bit of a comparison, just finding middle of the road, 2021 Tesla Model 3, Standard Range Plus. Both of these happen to be in Tampa. They have similar number of miles on them. You can see the price of $23,700 for the white one, 24,100 for the black one. What we wanted to do was to go through our tool set and show what the value of these are and what we're seeing with these. You mentioned being in accidents earlier on the webcast. So let's take a look at that. We'll take a look first at this white one here. And very first thing that we see here is the red auto check report, and the VHR, bad VHR, means that there's been a deduction applied for a history issue. When we look at the history of this, we do see a lower score. It's actually lower than what the average is of 90 to 95. This is at 88. Well, why? Number one, the mileage is super high, and it's being sold. It's been a rental car, which depreciates the value. And then we come down here and look at, there's been some damage reported. We can even see that it's actually been in 2 collisions. And we don't see the nature of the impact. That level was not available. But in November 2022, there's a collision. In February of 2023, there was a collision. And that has led to this vehicle taking a bigger hit on value. If we scroll down and look at our median price for this vehicle that's listed, this isn't a final sales price, it is a listing price. But on the market, we see a median price in our area of $33,394. And that's a bit higher than what we see for this vehicle, because again, there's high mileage, 2 different accidents, and it's a rental car. The estimated retail value of this vehicle is set at $26,400 according to our tool set. So when we look at this vehicle, $23,700 seems like an okay deal. I want to come back to the okay deal part in a second, but let's take a look now at this same vehicle. It's black, similar miles, and over here using the same tool set, there's a big difference in the numbers just right off the top here. But first, let's pull up the auto check report, and we can see that the score is a bit higher on this one. It is, again, a high mileage car for a 2021. It is for sale from a rental company, and it's had a minor accident. When we look at this, we see in July of 22, there was a minor collision, and it says that it was minor. That's why it's orange and not red here, to the front bumper. This is probably something like a parking lot fender bender, just a little ding there. And we can see that in the numbers here. Again, we know the median price of this vehicle, it's the same because it's the same model. But when we scroll down and look at the estimated retail value of this one, it is a bit higher at $26,400, which means that, 24,100 seems like a good deal here as well. Now, between these two, I think what you have to decide, and this is what we were discussing, Rod, is as we've already looked at, these cars potentially have been a bit more abused. They've been supercharged, maybe almost exclusively supercharged, perhaps always to 100%. And while the new Model 3s, that's good, in 2021, really, you wanted to be in that 80, 85%, no more than 90%. And you didn't want to use them exclusively on supercharger. So there has been some degradation here. It is a rental. Is it worth the cost savings that you can get for this high mileage vehicle with the conditions we've discussed versus buying one a few $1,000s more that doesn't have those issues? You know what I mean, Rod?
I do. And, it's like we always talk about, the sale happens when value exceeds price, and it's just personal preference for everyone. These things, you could definitely take into consideration why you're saving a few $1,000s now. The mileage is significantly higher. The history report is going to show it's a rental, has been a rental, which is going to ding the resale value as well. So you wonder, hey, is that $3,000 going to really, am I really saving that in the long run, or is it kind of a short-term, easy kind of a savings? And then, the other thing to consider, if they have been in an accident, I would certainly recommend getting an inspection done, because you just never know. When you look under these in Tesla in particular, I mean, you want to see a huge debate. Just look at the debate about changing the tires and using jacks and the pucks for the jacks and damaging the battery underneath. I mean, just a littlest fender bender, and you go to get some battery warranty work done, and there's a little ding to the battery. So there's just a lot to consider, and it just comes back to I think personal preference. If you're all about, you know, it fitting into your budget and that's your budget, you've never been able to get into pre-owned Teslas probably this affordably for this new of a model before. So, you know, there's an argument to be made that there's, you know, I can get into this thing and it fits my budget. And for my particular lifestyle, the EV is a good fit for me, and it could be a good value. But there's also the point, I didn't know this. Sure, the interview on CNBC that we talked about, I wasn't aware about this whole ride share. I guess is when we talk Lyft and Uber, they call that the ride share companies. I wasn't really aware that renting a vehicle for the week and getting your side hustle on was a thing, but apparently that was something Share was really banking on as I guess, you know, a part of his decision to go this deep into electric. And so,
and that's not going away, by the way, because it's in fact for the ride shares, the major cities are requiring that the ride shares, Uber, Lyft, be 100% electric. And so that is a fact.
Yeah, they're saying by 2030 that everyone, I think they'll backstep that probably like so much of this. But yeah, they're saying by 2030 that they want their entire, you know, if you're going to do Uber, you're going to be an electric vehicle, was my understanding from what Cher said in that CNBC interview. But to me, the only thing worse than a vehicle that has, you know, been a rental or a vehicle, and I shouldn't say worse, but a rental is and then buying a vehicle that someone used as an Uber is and you put those two together and it's not a real favorable look in terms of resale value. I'm just, take my opinion out of it, and I'm just speaking objectively from a, you know, this vehicle has been a rideshare vehicle and it's been a rental. I don't know how much of that goes on. I really didn't know that much of that was a thing. I picked up on that from that CNBC interview, though. And we'll put, again, like Tory said, we'll put the link in the show notes so you can go and watch that interview for yourself and draw your conclusion on that.
And it's a pretty significant savings if you look at the average list price, or the median list price at $33,000. I mean, you have to take the deduction for the mileage and the accidents and the rental car, but if these cars are selling a 2021 Tesla Model 3 standard range, $30,000, and you can get it for $23,000, and it still has a warranty on the battery. It again, I'm playing the devil's advocate here on both sides of this. Of you can save, you know, $6,000-7,000 potentially, but it does come at a cost.
You know, one thing we need to research that I don't know, to be eligible for the pre-owned tax credit, you have to buy it from a dealer. In this case, is Hertz, I guess, they are a qualified dealer. Okay.
Yeah, right. They from so what I've read,
you add $4,000 on top of these, and you know,
$20,000.
It's a game changer for sure.
Yep, and it's still got a battery. Now here is again, we're playing both sides of the table here because we want to just share the data. We're not coming with our you know, emotions or our thoughts and opinions as much as we are just sharing the data. But you know, you can get this for $20,000, saving the $4,000, and it's under warranty, and you've got a 65,000 mile 2021, you know, Tesla Model 3. But now when you go to resell it, it still wasn't an accident. It still was a rental vehicle. It still has high miles. And so what is it worth when you go to sell it and it's got 90,000 miles on it, or 100,000 miles? You know, there's just, you have to make sure that you know that you're making the right decision here. And it could be great for somebody who's looking for a deal, and wants to keep it for a year and put 10,000 miles on it, or maybe not good for somebody who is going to keep it for several years and run up a lot more higher miles than the 65 that's already on it. So, excuse me. I won't say that this is a shameless plug, but I do want to pull up just another option here that I feel like that it makes sense for us to mention. This is an auction that we have live on our site right now for EV bids. This is a 2019 Tesla Model 3 with 41,000 miles. It's in excellent condition. We have refurbished the wheels. Great car, no accidents. In fact, here, I'll go over and look at the values of it. 2019, you can see the auto check VIN report is in great condition. It's got a 92 score, average between 88 and 93, so it's on the upper end of that. No title issues, no accidents, no insurance, not a high mileage car. And when we go down and do that same look here, the median price for what vehicles are listed for this same model is $28,500. And we see that a good estimated retail value of this is $28,000. Well, right now, this hasn't met reserve, but it's got 2 days and 6 hours left, and we're at $12,300. So if anybody is looking for a good 2019 Model 3, and by the way, that valuation that's within our tool set here, AccuTrade, we have refreshed that to today's value, and it did go down some based on what we imagine is the news of all the Hertz rental cars going onto the market. So this has jumped down some. This was up closer to $30,000. It's jumped down to $28,000, and this could be a great deal for somebody. We do anticipate this getting up into the low 20s, which would still be for a good mileage, no accident, super clean Model 3 that does. I've driven this a few times. Great ride. The range on it is incredibly accurate. It's one thing I've been really impressed with about this vehicle. This is going to be a great deal for somebody, I feel like, by the end of the auction. So, Rod, I felt like we couldn't get done with this talking about Hertz and everything and showing the Model 3s they have for sale, comparing it to something else on the market and what could be a great value for somebody.
Yeah. It all comes down to personal preference. A good deal is every person is in a different situation. Everybody has. I have a good friend who will drive to Texas to save $1,500, and yes, I won't drive to Texas to save $1,500. Some people are dead set on new. Some people are dead set on pre-owned, and so defining a good deal is a very personal thing. Value is up to the individual and the individual set of circumstances. And there's no doubt some of these Hertz cars are good deals, and there's probably some of these Hertz cars that maybe aren't so good of deals. It's just comes down to personal preference and what specific things are important to the buyer.
Yeah,
I do think Hertz has put they've penciled a fair number on these things based on what we've seen, though.
I do. Yeah, I think saving it just is the right buyer, but saving $6,000-7,000 over what would likely be a sale in the market for another vehicle is reasonable.
Yeah,
it's reasonable. It's just know what you're buying if you go that route is the key thing here. So, well, hey guys, thanks for joining us again. I'm Tory Hornsby for Rod Stucky. We appreciate you joining us and taking a look at this news from Hertz rental cars and selling 20,000 EVs and what that's going to mean to the market. Appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next time.